to the Why Are We Here podcast, where we figure out why we're here, or talk about it at least. And today I'm going to be talking about overthinking, the new thing that people like to talk about. So I got to this topic this way. I was watching the World Series with my son, and I was explaining baseball to him. I played baseball. I was a baseball guy. I know baseball inside and out. I thought I was going to have a career in baseball. Like, baseball is one thing I know really, really well, more than anything else, almost. Along with like physics, acid. So I'm explaining baseball to him, and he says to me, "It sounds really complicated." And I thought about it for a second, and I was like, well, you're right. It does sound really complicated, because every time something would happen, I'd be like, okay, now that's because, when you round first, they don't know if they're going to be going to second or not, or, well, you can run through first if it's like a play at first. Trying to describe a force out, tagging up, infield fly rule, and
fan interference. The new rules about review. You can only throw to first three times.
I mean, those are the throwing to first. Like, we knew 10, 15 years ago they were going to make rules to speed the game up because they were losing viewers. People were saying it was too slow. But only being able to throw to first twice, and then the third time you have to get them or it's a balk. To me, that sounds like they did it, and whatever, it probably does make the game faster. Got to come into the modern era, whatever. Point is, every time something would happen, I would have to tell him something that you don't just know by watching. There's not a really easy set of rules. You got, one team hits, the other, those rules. But then there's little complicated stuff. And then there's all the little unwritten rules, and, about turning double plays, and when they play in on the grass with somebody on third, and when to do that and when to not. How every pitch, every player knows every possible thing that could happen, and they have to calculate it every single pitch. And, sometimes the pitches are very similar, not much changes. And it's not, to me, it's a very easy game, but I grew up playing it. I played it from 5 to 18, so I knew it inside and out before I was even adult. I mean, I knew more about baseball than anything else until I was in my 20s. So I realized, holy shit, baseball was perfect for me, because overthinking to me is what people that don't have ADD say when they, think about something way too, like when you make a decision and then you like think about it more, and you're like, well, what if this happens and this guy might think this, and it's like you're overthinking it. Just make a choice. So there's multiple kinds of overthinking. I thought there were only two. There's more than two, but I mean, there's at least, you know what I mean? There's at least two. So if you have ADD, it's going to be totally different. If you have alt ADD, which is what they call it when you have on the spectrum autism and ADD together. And for those of you that haven't been watching any of my previous videos, I have ADD. I was diagnosed with ADD with anxiety when I was 22, and also Asperger's, and also depression and some other stuff. But so I've been dealing with this, disease for 20 years. I have gone periods where I was on medication and I was really pretty functional and did well in the world. And then periods where I self-medicated and everything fell apart, because drugs don't actually help. They just feel like they help. I mean, if you're an addict also, I guess. But that's what I realized that was pretty huge, is that this whole 20 years, the reason that I'm an addict, and I'm not saying I'm not an addict, I think I will always be an addict. I think to think anything else would be dangerous, even if it's true. But the point is that self-medicating is what ruined my life. Like drugs, drug abuse, addiction. That is why I every day have periods of time where I literally hate myself. And I mean, it's a feeling of just like rage at myself. And that's part of what they say depression is. And so, I'm dealing with it. And for anybody that wants to know, I'm over 3 years clean now, and 6.5 years clean out of the last 7 or so. And so I'm doing much better. I'm fixing a lot of the wreckage of my past and all that stuff, and have been in and out of recovery for 20 years. So the point is, I thought I was making a video about overthinking, and it turned into, because I saw this video by Ben Jordan, and you may not know him, maybe you do. He's a musician who makes good videos about music stuff and ADD stuff and stuff like that. But there were some stats that I did not know about unmedicated ADD behavior. I mean, that's like, that's crazy to me, but.
Let's start with the most direct and horrifying statistic that you're going to hear in this video. In a study published earlier this year, it was found that people receiving treatment for ADHD in the form of medication had a 19% lower risk of death than those who are not being treated. And this is a really legit study tracking hundreds of thousands of people in each group over a period of 2 years. Here's some more not at all fun facts. Adults with ADHD who are not treated as children suffer from anxiety, depression, and physical ailments 30% more than adults without ADHD do. Adolescents with ADHD who are left untreated are twice as likely to abuse alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, and unprescribed drugs such as stimulants than adolescents who are adequately treated and prescribed those stimulants. Young adults with ADHD who are not receiving medication as treatment are 9 times more likely to have or cause an unwanted pregnancy. Young drivers with untreated ADHD have 3 times more motor vehicle crashes than average and are statistically at a higher risk of destroying their vehicle than an adult who is legally drunk. Then when you mix in a dozen or so studies strongly suggesting higher suicide and homicide risk, it gets pretty easy to say that having untreated ADHD is incredibly dangerous. And that's on top of studies showing that untreated ADHD results in poor job performance, poor school performance, higher divorce rates.
And also, he said ADD is a dopamine deficiency, which maybe I heard that at some point, but to me, that was the first time that I actually realized what that means. That the reason that you can only focus on things you're interested in is because those things give you dopamine. And I always thought that meant, well, I should be able to focus on something else because, just because it doesn't excite me, I should still be able to do it. And that's the whole thing about ADD. That's crazy. My son has ADD, and we have there's frustration because, he'll be doing something he likes and he's all excited, and then we switch to something he has to do and he just gets really sleepy, and it's frustrating. But, knowing that it's a dopamine deficiency, meaning you don't have enough dopamine to start with. And my addiction thing is opiate use disorder. And my mom put Paregoric, which is basically morphine, on the roof of my mouth when I was an infant. And I probably have a brain that's already predisposed to, reward pathway hijack type stuff. So I have kind of a perfect storm of ADD, on the spectrum, depression, anxiety, addiction for opiate use. And it's been really, really difficult, always. And so that's why drugs were one of the only ways I could slow my brain down or not feel a ton of different things about a ton of different things. It's been a struggle. And so when I saw these stats and really thought about what dopamine deficiency means, I realized that was actually overthinking can be a spinning of wheels, but it can also be just a feature of having ADD where you see all these different angles. And for those of you that don't know, again, I had a bad acid trip, a really bad acid trip that changed how I think, how everything works in my brain. It changed me from being bad at math to being really, really good at math. I mean, it was provably insane, and crazy, what it did. So it did a lot of things kind of in the same arena, anxiety and stuff. So, and I'm not trying to say it's really hard for me. I'm trying to say that to overthink can simply mean a normal person, a neurotypical person, saying, that thinking about all these different options and what this person would think and this angle and this outcome possibility and all this type of stuff to figure out the absolute best possible way to proceed about something. That's not really overthinking sometimes. Sometimes that's just having really good critical analysis. And see, that's my problem, is my IQ is very high. And I don't know if that means I'm really smart or not, but it does mean that my brain sees patterns really fast and processes things really quickly and really well and all that stuff. So my critical analysis is like a feature of my character attributes. Like it's like the main thing that tells me that I do have something good is the fact that I'm smart and also an empath. It's like the two hand in hand. So IQ and EQ together. And it's not really all that common to have a really high of both of those. And I don't know what it really means. The neurodivergent, all of the different, disorders. And I keep using quotes because these are things that, I buy into the labels, ADD and all that stuff, as far as coming up with a way for modern medicine to treat a group of symptoms based on over time communicating, building up knowledge and stuff. But I don't think about it like I have ADD. I just think, I can't focus and I'm thinking about 10 things at once and all of the symptoms just feel like the symptoms. I don't really do a whole lot of labeling and categorizing and all that stuff, but I am aware that society does. So that's where the quotes come from. So it's really difficult. It's like somebody who's addicted to eating food somehow, and I have had issues with food. I have an addictive personality. I think I've been addicted to just about everything anybody can be addicted to at some point. But what is addicted? It's another one. It's like it causes negative consequences and you can't stop doing it. I mean, everybody does that about something at some point. Is that an addiction? I don't know. It's up to you. That's the thing. That's kind of what makes it hard. But the intelligence thing is, it's like if one of the things that makes you unique in a good way is that you're really smart, and the critical analysis skills are really, sharp, and they are like all of the good things that have happened are because of that, more or less. It makes it really hard to discern when you're overthinking and when you're just doing the thing that you're really good at. And there's a lot of overlap. And every time that you're overthinking, you just before that point weren't. So where's that cutoff, and how do you determine, and do you stop overthinking when you start overthinking, or do you just, kind of give into it? And it's difficult. So it's like food in the sense that you have to eat, and I wouldn't say you have to have sex, but you pretty much have to have sex. So if you have an addiction to food or sex, then it's really difficult to discern what desires and urges and things like that are because you're just hungry, or your wife looks really good right then, and when it's like trying to manage your emotions and what I mean, it makes it very complicated. So what I am trying to do moving forward is I'm trying to help people that have that similar, whether it's just in one area or in a bunch like mine is, that have that one thing that they have to do or even are really good at doing, but also is causing a lot of problems. And my life is characterized by hating myself for being a failure because I self-medicated my crazy brain, which same crazy brain got me, a degree and 4 years of straight A's in a physics, math, and economics triple major. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, so you kind of see like a triple major, physics, math, and economics, straight A's without trying. That's a good thing. That's nice that my brain was able to do that. And a lot of that was because of that bad acid trip. But there's a video about that, by the way. But the point is that it's the same thing that caused the failure that did the good stuff. And so you can't just cut it out. You can't do the complete abstinence like you would do if it was, say, drugs, heroin, alcohol. You can cut that out. You can do abstinence on that stuff. And I know that the 12-step programs that deal with sex and food and all of the ones that are things you still have to do, I'm sure they have a better handle on this aspect of it. But what I'm trying to do is help people that aren't going to 12-step meetings. They are living life and having consequences that they don't want from a bunch of different stuff that, or just one thing that they're really good at that's also holding them back or causing really big problems or hurting their relationships. I mean, consequences can happen in a lot of different ways. I mean, and I could go through a bunch of examples, like you could be in a good marriage and because you're a sex addict, ruin it because you don't understand that you're crossing a line at some point and trying to get your partner to either do things or think of things or be accepting of things or whatever that you think are perfectly normal and they don't. Or maybe you smoke cigarettes and your family hates how you smell and like they're really, and your health and stuff, but you can't stop. I mean, it can really be pretty simple things like smoking cigarettes. I quit smoking cigarettes. Cigarettes, probably the hardest thing to quit of all the stuff that I have quit. And I have quit pretty much everything there is to quit at one point or another. And now am quit from pretty much everything. So, the fact that when I walk into a convenience store, I still have an urge over 2 years later to get a pack of cigarettes and just smoke one and throw it away, knowing for damn certain that I would not just smoke one and throw it away. Maybe I would that time, but I'd get another one pretty soon after that, and I'd be smoking within a week. I mean, I know me. Some people aren't like that. Some people can quit, and then it's just never a problem again. You probably aren't an addict if you can do that, but, I'm not here to decide who's an addict. I am trying to use the pain, suffering, failure, abject self-hatred that I have. I mean, it almost it makes me feel emotional right now that I hate myself. Like, I don't want to hate myself. It's not something that I like, but it's not a fun thing to genuinely hate yourself. And most of the time, I don't. I really don't. I actually think I'm pretty, neat is the word that was always used growing up. A lot of times I feel that way about my son. Like, he's 13 and he seems to know a lot of things that are way past his age, and his vocabulary is really good, and he wants to emotionally help people deal with their issues and stuff. He's really awesome, and I don't think I'm awesome, I guess, but I do think that I have a lot of qualities that are pretty rare and are pretty good. So I don't just hate myself, but I know there are a lot of people out there that must feel like I do, because I have tried very, very hard to not allow the failure to create more failure. And that's what happens when you focus on the failure and the lack of doing what you wish you had done and what you could have done. And when you focus on that, you just create more of it. And the days where I can't seem to get over it are the days where I don't really get anything done. And when I say get anything done, I mean things like this, to try to help other people that are at some earlier stage, hopefully, of this than where I got to. I'm 44 with a family, and I have caused them an immense amount of suffering, not to mention before that. I mean, my original family friends, girlfriends, I could go on. I mean, I have caused a lot of, not like, I haven't like, you know, physically beaten a lot of people or anything, not that kind of suffering, but just bad emotional consequences to things because I was unable to just be a normal person. And when I say normal, I mean, not having to drink alcohol in order to have a conversation with somebody because the voices in my head are so loud that I am not leaving my apartment. Like in my 20s, I did not leave my apartment unless I was drinking and smoking weed, and usually more stuff because, and I didn't know this at the time. At the time, it did make me feel like a fucking piece of shit. It was like, so I can't just be around people without drinking. Like, I know it's a social lubricant for everybody and everybody has some degree of that. But I mean, I would like hermit isolate unless there was alcohol or something else that could get me over that feeling. It was an inescapable, overpowering weight, or like, I don't even know how to describe it that well. I probably could, but that's not what this was going to be about. So I didn't really flesh that out very much. The overthinking to realizing that it was a feature to the self-hatred because of the failure, because of the same thing that was the feature, meaning the good part and the bad part that I was talking about, and seeing unmedicated ADD stats, all of that together, like that's basically what I was already trying to kind of do, but it kind of crystallized it into one, kind of 1, 2, 3 little step realization that I hadn't had before. So that's what this is about. I don't have a ton of like, I have some things I do to deal with that for me. I have this little mechanism that I've come up with, and I didn't really come up with it. It's I call it GAFHO, which is basically a joke, but gratitude, acceptance, faith, help others, a 4 little step thing. Anytime I have like overpowering emotional shit I need to kind of regulate, I do the gratitude and be grateful for some stuff, and then accept the things that you aren't grateful for, the bad shit, basically. The gratitude, the acceptance, so the good, the bad, and then faith, meaning remember about God, and then help others, meaning focus on somebody else, like you do at the 12th step of the 12 steps. 12-step programs are what originally saved my life and got me sober, clean, to a point where I could start figuring anything about myself out in my 20s. And so that's where that kind of came from. So I didn't come up with gratitude, except, you know what I mean? But that little 4-step thing is something that I do. I quit smoking. I used nicotine pouches for like the last 3 years, before they were cool, by the way. Not that it matters. And stopped drinking soft drinks. I obviously don't drink alcohol. I drink water all the time. I drink coffee some. I wake up, I do a stretch. I had my shoulder replaced, which is a pretty major surgery, in March, so I can't do yoga yet, but I do as closest thing that I can to it. I stretch, breathing exercises that the short version is in through your nose for twice as long as out through your mouth. So, that's the base, and then there's other stuff that you can do, but that the breathing, the gratitude, acceptance, faith, help others thing, meditating, journaling, just that right there is a game changer if you actually do it and are genuinely had no idea what to do and we're doing all this crazy stuff and then started doing that. Like, you will see an absolute night and day difference. You have to get enough sleep. You have to have decent sleep patterns. A routine is pretty important, or you will end up, if you're like me at least, you'll end up either cutting stuff out or not doing things or doing extra stuff. It's nice to have a routine that takes care of the base stuff, and then you can do whatever else. I have a rule that I do at least 3 important things every day. Sometimes usually it's only 3, and that's a way of not trying to do too much, but making sure that I do something. And that can be a phone call that I've been putting off, which I try not to put off phone calls. Dealing with obligations immediately are one way, and it's hard. It's really hard. I still don't do it very well. But when I have like 3 phone calls I need to make and I get them all out of the way, don't put them off for a week. If I put them off for a week, then I end up worrying about it, thinking about it, feeling bad about it for a week, and then doing it anyway. So I just started doing them immediately, and it helps. Night and day difference. Exercise, sleep, diet. Just those 3 are a big difference. But those 3 with routine, cut out soft drinks, don't smoke. If you are using, mood or mind altering chemicals, which I would just say drugs, but that includes prescriptions, and it can include things like coffee, but definitely things like alcohol that are, and weed, which a lot of people don't consider drugs, but that's why I say mind or mood altering substances. If you're using those and you become dependent on them, you're going to have a really hard time getting back to zero to even start that other stuff. So if you're not addicted to something substance-wise, don't get that way, because that's about the hardest thing you can add to already having these like overthinking and other type of issues. So, and support people. That is probably the single biggest thing. Other people that are struggling with the same type of stuff you struggle with, talking with them. And that is the backbone of AA, NA, and all the other ones, is one addict helping another, period. And then there's a lot of other stuff, but that's the only part that you can't do it without. So if you're trying to do it alone, it's going to be really hard. Now, if you're not really dealing with addiction and you're just trying to like self-improve and you have some addictive things, then I can't really speak to that. Maybe alone, maybe it's doable. I don't know. So the whole reason I make these videos, this now podcast. No.
No bark. Just wait a minute. You're doing very good.
The reason I make these videos is to hopefully help somebody that is struggling with the same stuff. And the earlier on you realize that you're struggling with that kind of thing, the better. Because the sooner you start dealing with it, the sooner you will get a handle on it. Because it's not like right when you start dealing with it, you get a handle on it. It takes some time. And if you're in your 30s, 40s, and more, it gets harder. It gets harder and harder. So anyway, make these to try to help people that are like me. I'm trying to, if all of the failure and suffering and pain and all that stuff starts to have a purpose, meaning if this channel starts to help people, then I won't be a failure. It will just be the stuff that happened that allowed me to be helpful to those people. And that is why I'm doing this, because unless I become a counselor or something, there's no other thing that I'd be able to do that would make all of that failure actually like mean something. And so please help me make it mean something, meaning help other people. And I am an extremely emotional person. The EQ I mentioned, I'm an empath. Sometimes I don't even have to be present with a person, but definitely if I am present with a person, I can usually, and it's not like I think, what are they feeling? My brain just knows. And it isn't always fun. And, sometimes it's really hard. Like if I see suffering, for example, sometimes it's really hard to move on to something else because it's overwhelming. So I know that there are enough people out there that this would help. I'm trying to put it in a format that it will actually hopefully reach people and help them. And I'm trying to find a way to put in there the things that I've done that have helped. But sometimes it's just knowing, that there are other people like that and listening to them talk. It can be inspiring. I've been told my story's very inspiring. I mean, completely, life over junkie to, successful family provider and clean. Like, I mean, I didn't think I was going to live past 25. And then, I mean, it's been a very hard, like daily hard struggle for a very long time. I mean, I've been to prison twice. Like, I've been I've been to the bottom, you know what I'm saying? And I had some opportunities. I mean, I was born middle class. I had the ability to go to college. I should have made something of myself a long time ago, but I didn't. And it was because of this stuff. So if this stuff can prevent somebody else from also having that same eventuality, being 45 and having to figure out what the hell do I do now? And I mean, I guess I was 37 or something when that happened, because I've now been making good progress for 8 years. I was released in 2017, for anybody that's wondering. It was pretty long time ago. And I have videos on almost all of this stuff. Most of them are within this podcast playlist. I did not realize that to make a podcast, it's just a playlist. Yet, there's a squirrel in the roof, Tucker. Just let it be. I didn't realize to make a video, a podcast, you just put it on a podcast playlist. So I'm putting I've already put most of the self-help type videos on that podcast playlist. Most of them were videos, so they weren't just talking unedited like this. This one, I planned on sitting down and just talking. I hope that it's both somewhat entertaining. I know it's just a blue background, and I'm just talking. So I hope this helps somebody. That's that whole long thing to say. Help me make this help some people by, watching it. If you liked it, please like it. If you want anything similar, subscribe, be great. I don't even like mentioning the like and subscribe thing, but somebody convinced me a pretty long time ago that people genuinely forget to click stuff. So that's why I say that. That's probably where I'm gonna drop it, and my son's gonna be home from school in just a minute anyway. Definitely, I wasn't even intending to go this long. I think I actually did a pretty decent job, though, of going from the first thing I was gonna mention through kind of the rest of it without my brain hasn't been working as sharply recently, and I'm having trouble remembering certain things and stuff. I got additional sleep last night, and I think now that happened, and I haven't felt that way right making this, that maybe I have not been getting enough sleep. So, I mean, even when you're doing well, there's still tweaks and like major mistakes and stuff. Basically, I'm just a normal person now, and normal people have issues with sleep and everything else. But I'm not a junkie having trouble with staying out of fucking jail anymore. And that's obviously a major difference. But one, I'm not saying it's pathetic, I don't judge it, but one is so far down and the other one is just normal. So not really successful, not like doing great, just not way down here. And it's hard to feel good about that. I try to, and sometimes I do, because the progress is like unreal, the amount from the bottom to here. But to just now be at kind of normal or in the middle, or no progress, or no success, just not current failure, doesn't feel great. And I mean, you saw, if I don't cut that part out where I lost my shit, you saw how it affects my emotions. I mean, I could not get that feeling to stop being overpowering. And I mean, everybody knows what that feels like. I don't think it's all that common to have all of the shit that I do, but I definitely think there's people out there. So however many of them, of y'all there are, I don't know. I hope a lot that I can make my failure of a life mean something, and thereby not being a failure. It will retroactively make all of that shit not cause self-hatred. So I mean, it's kind of selfish in a way. Not to mention, it helps me stay sharp and clean and focus on the ball when I'm thinking about and talking about this stuff on a regular basis. So I say all that to say, I hope you are not suffering with a lot of pain, but it definitely can get better. And I hope that we can kind of, heal and get better together. I know that there were a bunch of people that loved me that I never realized did. A lot of them are gone now, but there are probably a bunch of people that love you that you are unaware of. And if there's no one, there's somebody like me who has been through a lot of the stuff you've probably been through. And I mean, I don't know you, obviously. I'm here in this little box or this little thing in your pocket or whatever, and we don't know each other, but I can pretty safely say from one human who has suffered to another that I do love you. And I hope that this helps. I hope it will be success, like I've said on most of my videos. This video, success, if it helps one person. And if more than that, that's gravy, and that'd be great. So I think that's where I'm going to drop it today, meaning microphone or stop talking or whatever. Till next time, this side or the other.